How are nuclear weapons different from conventional weapons?
Nuclear weapons are different from conventional weapons in many ways. One of the things that I like to say is that they really defy the kind of concept of both space and time. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you have a conventional weapon and you explode it over a city or wherever, that explosion is going to have an impact in that local place, and it's going to have that impact in time. And then you could come back and clean up the area and rebuild and so on. Nuclear weapons are not like that. A nuclear explosion in one place, in one location, and in one split moment of time can have both global effects, and it can have impacts over actually even thousands of years through the effects of radiation. And there's sort of a number of ways in which even a single nuclear weapon explosion can be incredibly dangerous and devastating. And then there are a number of impacts in which a nuclear war, in which many nuclear weapons are used, can be obviously quite clearly much more devastating. So the thing that people know about nuclear weapons is that one nuclear weapon can be much more powerful than any kind of chemical explosion. So, for example, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki
80 years ago.
80 years ago, almost exactly, had what's called energy yields of 15 and 21 kilotons of TNT. Now, these bombs were made out of uranium and plutonium, uranium for the Hiroshima bomb and plutonium for the Nagasaki bomb. But when we describe their energy yield, we describe it in terms of the equivalent amount of chemical explosive that you would need. So that's where the 15 kilotons, 15,000 tons of TNTs, how much you would have needed of chemical explosive to produce the energy equivalent to that explosion. And that in and of itself is huge. And just to give you one kind of point of comparison, the Oklahoma City bombing, which I'm sure you remember, it was actually the first year that I was living in the United States. It was in April of 1995. And it was a devastating event. It was the equivalent of 2.5 tons of TNT. So Timothy McVeigh had filled the Ryder truck with chemical explosives, lit it up outside of a federal building, killed 168 people, including 19 children in a daycare center. And there was damage in a radius of up to, I think, 16 blocks, something of that order. So absolutely an incredible and devastating event. At the same time, that explosion was 6,000 times less energetic than the bombing of Hiroshima. So 15,000 tons of TNT versus 2.5 tons of TNT. So that just begins to give you a scale for just how powerful a single nuclear weapon can be. And then on top of it is that we now have weapons that are far more powerful than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. In fact, in 1945, the U.S. had 3 nuclear weapons. One was used as a quote-unquote test, the Trinity test in the desert of New Mexico. And then 2 were used on attacks on Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Today, we actually have 12, on the order of 12,500 nuclear warheads, many of which are far more powerful.
How much more powerful?
So we know that both U.S. and Russia have nuclear bombs currently that are on the order of 1 megaton. That's about 70 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. at the height of the Cold War, when we were first testing nuclear weapons and actually first testing hydrogen bombs, which are different from the atomic bombs that were used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I can explain that as well. We were even testing the largest test that the U.S. had ever conducted, took place in the Marshall Islands. It's called the Bravo test, Castle Bravo test. And that was 1,000 Hiroshima bomb equivalents. And yet, the Soviets actually tested something even more powerful. They did so up in the North Sea, a region called Novaya Zemlya. And they tested, some accounts say 50 megatons. So that's more than 3,000 Hiroshima bomb equivalents. I've even seen accounts that say 58 megatons. So that would be basically, 4,000 Hiroshima bomb equivalents. The Castle Bravo test, which took place on March 1 of 1954, that test, that mushroom cloud, so we all sort of, have this vision of a nuclear explosion that produces the mushroom cloud. That mushroom cloud was 25 miles or 40 kilometers high. And at the widest, about 60 miles wide. So
60 miles?
Miles wide, the mushroom cloud. It's quite simply something that's unimaginable. And that test actually had truly devastating consequences for people living in the Marshall Islands. About 100 miles from where the test was conducted, a population was living in a place called Rongelap Atoll. And those people were very, very sickened and impacted by the test. It's a long story. They stayed there for 3 days. They were moved away. But to kind of cut to the present day, and this is actually from some of the research that I've done with colleagues and students at Columbia University, currently there's still parts of the Marshall Islands where radiological contamination is very high, and that testing ended in 1958. So it's now nearly 70 years later, and there's still contamination that quite simply is not safe. The way I like to put it is it's not safe for a multi-generational community to live in and to live there full time.
The most dangerous lies, not the ones that are shouted in your face. The most dangerous lies are the ones that whisper to you. And chief among those lies is the idea that prayer doesn't work. It doesn't matter. Oh, thoughts and prayers, they say mockingly. Actually, prayer is the single most important thing and the single most effective thing you can do ever. The push to morph America into a godless country didn't happen all at once. It was a very slow process. And the people who did it want you to fall for it through ambivalence by not even noticing. Downloading the Hallow app is the perfect way to foil that plan. It's one of the most effective things you can do to root yourself in God, to improve the life of your family and your life here and in the hereafter. So the idea of little lies pulling you from the truth is not new. The classic C.S. Lewis book, The Screwtape Letters, puts it perfectly. And Hallow's newest prayer series encapsulates the message of that book, resisting the forces seeking to separate you from God. Embrace faith and prayer. It is literally the only way. Downloading Hallow will help. Everyone here loves it. Everyone in my family loves it. Daily conversation, actually. So there's a battle for your attention, for your heart, and ultimately for your soul. You can ignore it or you can be prepared. Hallow is the #1 Christian prayer app in the world, and that is a well-deserved accolade. Download Hallow today. Reclaim the power of prayer, which is the fundamental prayer in the universe. 3 months of free Hallow at hallow.com/Tucker. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.